Welcome to another electrifying episode of the Commentary Booth, live via satellite, where we peel back the curtain on your favorite wrestlers and their cinematic inspirations. I'm your host, Jamie Apps, and today we welcome a thrilling guest who is often confused for Dominik Mysterio, but he's certainly a man in his own right, one of the brightest young stars of EPW in Perth. Joining us live via satellite, Jesse Lambert.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
Firstly, the Dominik Mysterio comparisons. How wild is that for you?
Oh, I was before even like the whole photo, like I was getting that for a year. Like I got I cut their hair into like the mullet and I was like, let's see how this goes. And then as soon as I get to one of the shows, Chris Target goes up to me and is like, oh, cool. Fake Dominik Mysterio. All right. And then I just heard that all day and I was like, I'm never going to let this go. I had a bunch of people like at work and stuff tell me, oh, you kind of look like that Dominik Mysterio. I'm like, I hear it a lot. And then when they were rumored to be here, everybody was like, you've got to do it. You've got to try it. And then like he's the first person I see coming back from our match at Reawakening, and that was like real surreal. So I was like, wow, just like it just lined up perfectly, like it was fate.
I remember seeing that photo go up on Instagram, and I was like, "Oh my god, they really are like twins."
Yeah, like I was just like, I don't know. I wonder if this is just. I thought like we'd take the photo and people would be like, okay, but yeah, you got a similar haircut. And then I wasn't sure if I was allowed to post it. So someone messages me going like, you gonna post it? I'm like, oh, were we allowed? And then they're like, yeah. And I did it. And then just phone nonstop, just everything. And I was like, this is my ticket. This is what gets me there. I love it.
On that front, since then, you've been building up, building up, building up. Uh, Championship match. What a
Yes.
wild ride for you.
Yeah. Who knew that like I didn't really expect to get to this point. Even when I started, like I was just always like, oh yeah, like maybe one day. And like I'd always made it like my goal. Like it's always been a goal since because when I started, I came in very much like, oh, I don't have any athletic background at all, but I'll be champion by like this point. And then clearly realized, yeah, maybe not. But then just as soon as like got the P plates and the photo happened and the big super show, I was just like, oh wow. And just yeah, I thought like I barely thought I'd be able to make it somewhere like interstate, but I just did IWA in January and I did Rampage and I've got some other things lined up and I was just like, oh wow, like this is really cool. And then just now they're like, oh, you're fighting for the title. I was like, okay,
Okay, I guess so.
sick. Yeah. And it's not even that. It's like the point that people are like, oh, you should like, I hope you win this. And I'm like, really? I hope I win too, but that's just me.
You're joining us on the show today to chat about your favorite movies and the influence on your wrestling career. Before we deep dive into your chosen topic, how big a part of your life are movies and TV shows?
Oh, very, very huge. When I was when I was like just starting high school, and you kind of get into the whole like, oh, like maybe like wrestling. Like I always wanted to be a wrestler, like in primary school. But then as you get to high school, you start to doubt yourself because your friends tell you it's not so cool. But I'd always been really obsessed with like movies and TV shows. So like I'd always wanted to do something in that kind of like I wanted to be a director for a bit and but then I got like my media scores back and I was like, oh, maybe
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 can't do
not. But
that.
I'd always kind of I was like kind of that wannabe film buff where I really just like read that like these are the good movies and be like, oh yeah, these are the movies that I like and like kind of faked it till I made it. But I just always have some kind of respect and like always like want to follow and see what's going on. I still follow like to see what's going on, what's getting made and stuff like that.
And have you always sort of taken that passion for movies and TV and sort of tried to weave that into the wrestling as well?
Oh, 100%. Like, definitely a lot more with a lot of like my like promos kind of there are little things I've started to borrow from movies. One of our promo guys He's also a big like little movie buff, so I'll always kind of be like, "Oh, what if we do this?" And he's like, "It's really obscure coming from you, but I really like it." And then we'll do something like that. Like obviously, like we did like the Rocky montage and stuff like that. Like I wanted to borrow. I'll just like watch something real obscure. Like I can't. I feel like I'm faking it because I can't name it on the top of my head. But I'll just like watch something and I'll be like, that'd be cool for like a little promo thing. And just always have those like little ideas. But like I always wanted to do, we did one recently for like a big 8-man. And I've got like the little cinematic shot and I really wanted to use the Spider-Man 2 soundtrack. And I was like, oh, can we use this? And they're like, no, too obscure of a reference. I was like, dang it.
Well, at least it's in on the notebook, maybe somewhere down the line where it'll fit better.
Definitely, definitely. I'm hoping so.
And I guess that's kind of the joy with wrestling too. It's not just that in-ring aspect to the performance. You do have those promos, hype packages that you can sort of treat like little short films.
Oh, definitely. Like you can, like I always was very inspired by like one of my biggest influences with everything is like the sitcom. Like a big like I kind of went through a lot of high school just watching a bunch of just like your classic 20-minute episode sitcoms, like your Parks and Recs, your Communities, trying to think what like Arrested Development. I don't know if you remember it, but do you remember Happy Endings?
Uh,
Real short-lived
I
sitcom,
know the name. I don't know if I've watched much.
real obscure 2000 like late 2000s to early 2010 sitcoms. It's my jam.
Right? Yeah, and like I guess yeah, you get to sort of treat them like mini movies. And I think over recent years we've seen people do more of that. It's not so much just the old school like stand in front of a promo wall and kind of promo down the barrel. Like people are looking at it and being like, how can I stand out with a movie?
Yeah, exactly, and especially in somewhere like not necessarily Australia because Australia there's so much good content promo coming out of Australia, but for Perth for a while it was just very much like the wrestling kind of telling the story or just two camera promos, but no one was really doing the kind of in their own story, like two characters talking to each other, not one character talking to the camera. And just I've always feel like that was something I was better at than talking directly to the camera. So kind of doing that. And I feel like you see a lot more of it now in like perf wrestling and stuff like that. And just the content promo has been in the last couple of years like pretty good coming out of here. So I think just having that difference, even if it's just like a carrot, like I saw one recently. I don't know who, but it was just someone sent it to me. It was like from an American indie promotion, and it was just this guy like putting like clown makeup on and like kind of like it was just him in a mirror, and I was just like, this is very intriguing. Like this has intrigued me more in whatever this promotion is and whoever this is than just if it was like, oh, I'm clown guy and I'm coming to you like May 12th. Like it tells a story and it kind of builds more intrigue in that way.
And you mentioned sort of the sitcom influence. I think that sort of really showed off in your recent storyline with the Untouchables and Amber.
Oh, definitely with that, and just kind of like me, Bob, and Dan. When we started, we kind of always had this like odd couple kind of thing going on. Like, I always consider me the relationship between me and Dan, SpongeBob and Squidward. It's just very much that odd couple. Like, one's really excited to be there, one's like real the straight man, like real like, oh, let's be sensible here. And then just when we got Bob there, it's like, cool, we've got our Patrick. That we've got it, and then just it just becomes this silly little unit, and like our name was taken from like one of the most popular sitcoms of all time, and just we kind of use that, and then bringing the seriousness of these are the two best wrestlers in the country and making them do little silly stuff with us. It's just chef's kiss. It's great.
Yep. Yeah, it was an awesome storyline and awesome payoff at the end as well.
Definitely. It's kind of it's right now the best moment like of my career, and I think we get there from all of that.
So the big question now is I've kind of been tipped off to this by James Hartness on what your topic is going to be, but what have you chosen as your favorite movie or TV show that has sort of had the biggest influence on you?
So I actually have one for both. My one for movie, hands down, Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed.
Mhm.
Scooby-Doo, I was thinking about it as well because I responded to your tweet and half of me was like, well, this is a bit silly. Let's see how this goes. And then you messaged me being like, oh, come on. And I was like, okay, now I've got to think about how this has actually like influenced me. But then I realized it actually has quite a bit. Just genuinely like growing up on Scooby Doo, like all my life, like just kind of like that 2000s, that 2000s style of stuff has always been intriguing from kind of that childhood. Because a lot of people, like you'll see a lot of retro wrestlers, they use like they're like 80s and they're like 90s kind of thing. Because that's kind of where everyone was born and what they remember. But then you've got this generation now who's like, oh, my big grand nostalgia is Scooby Doo surfing on the Tar Monster, and that like, and just that's mine. Like just that and Shrek are just like two things where it's like, wow, this is nostalgia for me, and it makes me feel a little bit like, oh no, I'm getting old.
Makes you feel like
But
you're getting old. Hang on a second. It's like, yeah, when people talk about, there was a song or a movie that was out recently, and people were like, oh yeah, it's like its 25th year anniversary. I was like, oh my god, I remember
yeah,
like watching that in the cinemas.
I read something about Endgame coming out
Mm,
like 5 years ago. It's like that's yesterday for me.
yep, yeah, it's crazy.
Like I'm still crying in that cinemas, like still. But just that early 2000s kind of influence, like the themes I use have always been like those 2000s like teen movie. Well, I used All Star because that's like your classic 2000s like kids movie. And now as the character kind of develops and like I'm on my P plates, like I went for like kind of like your teenage dirtbag. So it's like your kind of your teen wave kind of thing from that era. And then I don't know what's next, but it's kind of that next step up. But it's kind of the essence of what Scooby Doo is, like with Scooby and Shaggy, where it's just like it's these two people in this field who aren't very experienced, who are like the worst people for the field because one of them's a dog and one of them's a very
Afraid of
scaredy cat
everything.
human. Yeah, exactly. So you have these, in essence, you have these two people who shouldn't do this, but somehow they always get the job done and they do it quite well. And I feel like in essence, like thinking about it, I was like, oh, it's basically what I do, where I'm like, not a great wrestler, in probably shouldn't be, where everyone's very serious and like jacked and the best wrestlers ever. I'm like, oh, I'm hanging out with these two older guys and we just do silly little videos together. And then next thing you know, like I found a way to get to the EPW title. And it's like just all, and you find these ways to get there. And it's kind of like, huh. Like in an essence, Scooby Doo has kind of been the story of my career.
That's great. That's really awesome. I've never even like when you said Scooby Doo, I was like, how is this going to relate? And I thought, oh, maybe the silly comedy aspects because like the 2000s do have a very unique style of comedy. So I thought, oh, maybe that's it. But no, the idea of the story is great too.
That's kind of my sense of, that's kind of where a lot of the sense of humor comes from as well. I thought you were going to say you were expecting a big tar monster to come in May 11th. I'll skirt down, win the EPW title on that tar monster. No, I did always want the Mystery Inc. van as well. So
That'd be cool.
in a perfect world, I'm doing the Dominik Mysterio entrance with the police van, but it's with the Scooby Doo van.
That would be awesome. That'd be great.
Oh, I can't wait. I think I saw on Dynamite Sky Blue had the Scooby Doo inspired gear,
Yep.
and I was like, really mad I didn't think of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can't do
I
it
don't
now
know
because
how.
it'll be it's a Sky Blue reference, not a Scooby Doo reference.
Yeah, when I started doing the L plate shirts, I wanted to do different ones, and one of them I wanted to do was the Scooby Doo logo, so it's just like the L and the Scooby Doo font,
Yep.
like with the little Scooby Doo dog tag. But then I was just like, I just never got to that point, and then now I just like think about all these things. I'm like, should have done it.
Oh,
But I'm glad I stole the niche things from Scooby-Doo, not the ones that people go, okay, now you're just ripping off Scooby-Doo.
yep. And you mentioned sort of a theme for the next wave. I can see maybe something like the Superbad theme song or something being a good entrance music.
Oh, it's definitely that next kind of like coming of age story of going into more of an adult thing and stuff like that. That's another thing. That's something I've gotten into recently, like your Superbads and like your Eastbound Downs, like your Danny Bride stuff. Um, I said I had some TV shows because one of the main ones that I did like actively try to steal from was those two characters, Troy Barnes from Community and Andy Dwyer from Parks and Rec. Just because they were always kind of like they were two characters I always saw in myself. Just like the naive, like bumbling, like funny guy. Because I always just try to be fun. Like I was like, well, the least I could do is try and be funny. And I feel like being funny is kind of it's the easiest way to open people up. Like someone explained it to me really well, where it was just like the easiest way to get a reaction from someone is to make them laugh because laughing is something you kind of just do involuntary. And then once you've got them reacting, they're laughing, you've got them basically. And basically, I just think looking at me, like I was like, if I try to do something serious and try to like present myself really seriously, it's like, okay. But you just make like be the clown, but like have that kind of that vulnerability or like I don't think vulnerability is the word. I think it's kind of like that real innocent kind of I'm trying to think of the word.
Yeah, it's just like a relatability. Like people relate to you when compared to you look at the Untouchables and they're both shredded specimens of human beings, and it's like,
Beautiful, hunky
yeah,
people.
at least
And then
the direction
yeah,
you've taken, you stand out from that, and a lot of the other
yeah.
people in EPW as well.
Everybody's grown up once, and like I'm still figuring it out. But the people who see it are like, I've been down this road before. Like I see where this kid's coming from. So yeah, that's exactly what I was looking for. Like relatability, like those relatable kind of bumbling fools who make their way into your heart. That's what I always looked at, kind of being. And I was always scared that like I'm like, oh, if I try and do this, people just like would be like, okay, you're trying to steal this thing. But I just feel like when I tried to incorporate that into like being myself, it works. Like people really got behind it, and it's something that I'm like real thankful for.
And the fact that you haven't just pulled everything from this one movie as well, like you mentioned, there's the TV shows, there's the SpongeBob, like there's a lot of different elements that make up Jesse Lambert. So you're not just mimicking this one person. You are a whole culmination of different elements to be your own version of a character.
Oh, definitely. It's definitely on like how you take it. I feel bad because I came in like wanting to talk about Scooby-Doo and then I like just name dropped all these other things. So it's this big cocktail, like this big bowl of stuff. And I'm like, take this and see what you like with it.
No, I love it. And do you often get to go back and rewatch the Scooby Doo movies or the animated series to find new inspirations and new influences?
I did recently rewatch both Scooby-Doo movies. I do have to say they hold up quite a bit. I always thought Scooby-Doo 2 was way better than Scooby-Doo 1. I do think Scooby-Doo 1 is quite good. I think they're on par with each other. I've had a couple of arguments lately with which one's the better one. Same with Shrek. Like you always have the argument. So I always go back and rewatch them because luckily the things that like those type of movies, I have like friends who are also like, I want to watch this. Like I want to rewatch this, so we'll rewatch it. And I'll be like, it's pretty good. I'll just see like a little joke or something like that. It's like the one where they're in like the big prison balls and there's like the Girl Scouts and like the Mormons, and then he looks and then the Mormon's like, oh, have you heard the good news? And he's like, yeah, there's cookies. And I was just like, that's really good. I'm gonna try and steal that.
I love the Shrek reference too. I'm surprised more people haven't like pulled elements from Shrek, given that there is an entire wrestling scene in that movie.
Oh, legit. Like I was going through it. I I went through it recently and I was just like, what moves can I do? Like just looking at when me and Dan started tagging and I was like, we need tag moves. The first thing I did was just like, let's look at the Shrek scene.
Let's pull
See
some
if there's
moves
any.
from a Shrek movie instead of tape study of wrestling.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, sorry, can't watch the new AEW show. I gotta watch this Shrek versus all the Farquaad guys. Not gonna lie, it holds up. It does hold up quite well. Like as a wrestling thing, it's pretty good.
Yeah, it's very very cool.
It's my top 5 matches of all time.
In terms of the Scooby-Doo movie and cartoon, like, is there a specific character? You mentioned Scooby himself is pretty influential story-wise, but are there elements from individual characters that you pull as well?
I was always a big Fred guy as well. Going back to, I was always for some reason Fred was someone I always looked at, kind of growing up. But the more I realize it, the more I was always drawn to Shaggy. Just, and I feel like a lot of my wrestling stuff has been drawn from like Shet, just like kind of like I was saying with Troy and Andy from Community. It's that naive but relatable bumbling fool, and I feel like that is Shaggy to a T. Especially because I feel just with the stuff that we've been doing, I feel like we already have a Fred in Dan, and I feel like watching those movies, I'm like, I don't know how he's done it, but he is way more Fred-like than I remembered him being.
Always fun to then go back and rewatch something and be like, "Oh, wait, we are doing a lot of this with
Yeah,
without intentionally pulling from it."
yeah, exactly. Like I watched it recently from Newey Pro, the Scott Green Scooby-Doo match, and I just immediately saw that and I was like, this is genius. They've done it. I was a little bit angry. I was like, I'm so mad I didn't think of this first, because we'd had like Halloween shows in Perth and like, but like not many. Like it's not really a big staple for us because there's only like one show that will run at that time, and Dan will never be available, so me and Dan can't do something like that. But as soon as I saw Tuckman dressed as Scooby Doo and they did the whole chase, I was like, this is genius. And I'm a little bit mad we didn't think of this first.
Yeah, and you mentioned doing IWA. The combination of you, Scott Green, and Tuckman, that's like the perfect trio there, I think.
Oh, it's the dream team. We it's very much like Free Guys, who I feel have that kind of similar. So, and there's people who I've talked about. Me and Tuckman were in the car. We were talking about the other thing that we. Sorry, I'm out of camera. The other thing we kind of bonded over was that 2011 Muppets movie, and then It's just we just listened to that whole soundtrack on one of the drives there, and it was great. And then we showed Scott Green the movie, and he's like, "All right, I'm getting it a little bit," but just we were singing that song, and he's just in the back seat, half asleep. Like, I do not love this at all. But yeah, no, that those two guys are great. Like we've kind of him, Scott Green, and like Lucas Fantasia over here. Just kind of once they came over, we kind of all bonded over that kind of stuff, and just like it's four guys from that like kind of age group. And I realized just in conversations we'd have where it's like, oh, we grew up over the exact same like couple of things. And I feel like it's not even just those guys. Like I feel like just anyone in that kind of age bracket, just in Australian wrestling. I think the more I go outside of wrestling, just because a lot of the EPW heads are quite of like they're the ones who started it. So there's always been quite a bit of an age gap
Yep.
with me and those guys. So seeing people around the same age going, oh, Scooby Doo, Scooby Doo, and they're just like Scooby Doo.
Yeah, it's like immediately close friends. Like first time meeting, you're like, "Oh yeah, we're best friends now."
Yeah. Like Perth, I get to see, and I see it in a lot of like online social media, Australian wrestling stuff. Like I'll see a lot of Simpsons jokes and
Mhm.
stuff being thrown around. Everyone loves them, and then I just kind of felt bad because I wasn't allowed to watch The Simpsons as a kid.
Oh,
I got banned from The Simpsons for some reason. I still have no idea why, but my parents were like, no more of The Simpsons until you're like 13. And then like I started like kind of like sneakily watching The Simpsons until they were like, oh, well, why do we make this rule? This was stupid. You can watch The Simpsons. But I just like had gotten to that point where I'm like, oh, well, I'm already into like Ben 10 and SpongeBob. Like, I don't really need to watch The Simpsons. And then like I grew up and I was like, oh, Family Guy's kind of rude, but that's really funny. But just there's this whole like generation of people making all these Simpsons jokes where I get some of them because obviously I've seen like bits of it and I'm like, oh yeah, but I'm like, wow, I really missed out on this. I feel like I've missed out on an in joke, and I was like real bummed about it. But then like I was talking about SpongeBob with somebody, and then it's kind of that same thing where I like for a while I always thought that like that 2000s to like now kind of era is like you talk to someone and it's like that sponge. Like I feel like SpongeBob. I don't know it's on the same level, but I feel like that's our version of those kind of like Simpsons memes because there's so much stuff in SpongeBob that like you just kind of that classic SpongeBob where you're just like, oh, that like fits everything.
Yep, yeah, there's
There's-
lots of SpongeBob memes getting around now as well, so
Oh, definitely, and I feel like you'll see it as like the younger, like as more people grow up. But then I'm excited to see what the next thing is because who knows? Like we might have some young kid. I might make a SpongeBob joke to him, and
and
I know he'll make
and
a
yeah,
joke at me or
he'll be
like
looking
that.
at you like you look at the like Davis Storm or something when they're making some sort of reference. You're like, I don't know.
Yeah, just it's Del Cano's the big one who's always making them. It's like, oh,
Okay.
I don't. I'm always like, this is pretty funny, but I don't really get most of them. I'll throw one in, and that I remember, and it'll get a good laugh, and I'll be like, all right, I've succeeded. I've blended in.
I'm good for the next 6 months.
Yeah, exactly.
So then as we sort of circle back to Scooby-Doo, at the moment there are rumors swirling of a live action Scooby-Doo series in the works at Netflix. If you could cast from the Australian wrestling scene, who would you place into the Scooby-Doo iconic roles?
I'm going to just because they've already perfected the roles, and as much as I love Scooby Doo, it's theirs. I think Tuckman as Scooby Doo and Scott Green as Shaggy. I think that is theirs. Ooh, now this is the hard one. Fred's a big one. Fred's got to be. Oh, I think. Ooh, who's a good? I'm trying to think. You've got to have someone a little bit silly, but like very much the leader role, very corny, like dad type. I think it's got to be Dan. I think Dan. I'm casting as Fred. Um, who is Velma and Daphne? Daphne, Nikki Van Blair, hands down.
Yep, I can see that.
Yeah, 100%. And Velma. Who's this is a hard one. This is a hard one. You got to pick someone who's. I'm gonna say. I'm gonna say locally. I'm gonna say Stella Nix.
Okay.
She is quite smart. Quite smart. I'm going to say, and that's not just because in our first ever match we had at a closed off show, she was Gertrude the nerd, and she blinded me with an asthma inhaler.
I'm sure she's going to be happy that that's out in the public now.
Yeah. Oh no. That's all right. There's so much worse stuff in that. That match has been burnt, and I think every trainee growing up at that point is glad that that match is gone.
And then,
Yeah.
yeah, we can put yourself in there as like Scrappy Doo or something.
Yeah, definitely. I think Scrappy Doo, or we do the WrestleMania mystery, and I'm John Cena.
Yep, that'd be great.
Yeah. Uh, I heard about that reboot, and I was just like, I remember saying when Riverdale was out because I started watching Riverdale, but I'm like, I don't know if I rate this or not. I think I just started hate watching it, but then it started getting sillier, and I'm like, all right, okay. But then I was just like, we need this with Scooby Doo, kind of to a point. But then I was kind of like, oh, but I hate this show. I don't want to hate a Scooby Doo product. And then as soon as they, now I think the guy who did Riverdale is doing the Scooby Doo
I
show.
think so, yeah. That is always a concern when they reboot something. You're like, but I loved the original. Please don't ruin my childhood memories.
Yeah, exactly. You're just like, oh, if they kind of have like that kind of like a current age version of what those 2000s movies were, I think you're set.
I think Scooby-Doo, you just have to lean into the silliness. Like you can't go in there and try and take it seriously and make it this really scary like s- mystery. You just have to go in there and be like, it's silly. Like at the end of nearly every episode, they pulled a mask off a guy, and then he just had another mask on.
Yeah, and then it was just like half the time it's not even, oh, we're arresting this guy. This guy's going to jail. It's like, oh, I just wanted to do this to be close to my son, and then the son's like, oh, I love you, Dad, and then they're just fine.
Yep.
And then they just forget about it. But yeah, it's like the Freddie Prinze Jr. joke. He's a talking dog. Like he's a talking dog.
As we close out, looking ahead, what's in store for you in the world of wrestling? More trips over to the East Coast and things like that.
Yes, I'm going interstate soon. I believe I'm going to Melbourne quite soon. That's all I can really say about that for now. Otherwise, I'm still here in EPW, um, which is basically where I mainly go. I'm looking to come over soon, so you'll see a little bit more of me. I'll probably track down Dominik Mysterio to get another photo. My Instagram's kind of lost traction since, but no, there's like a lot of stuff going on with like EPW, and I feel like we're doing a lot of great stuff right now. So yeah, we've got our Vimeo back up and running, so hopefully a lot more content gets out from that. But just yeah, looking to travel around and try and get myself all over Australian wrestling.
Awesome. Yeah, and you guys are coming off the big super show, so there is a lot of sort of hype and eyes on EPW now, which I think is something that has been missing, but you guys really do deserve that attention a bit more.
Oh, definitely. A lot of Australian, a lot of Perth guys getting some eyes that are like well deserved.
Alrighty, so finally, where is the best place for people to support you and track this wrestling journey moving forward and keep up to date with future dates?
Well, I am on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Jesse P Play. I got the same app for all of them, so I'm pretty excited about that one. And then yeah, EPW Perth is the other place. That's my home base. But if you want to see me where I am otherwise, when I'm doing stuff like the commentary booth via satellite, um, Jesse P Play, Instagram and Twitter
Awesome.
mainly. No one really uses Facebook, I feel. So
Yeah.
Instagram and Twitter, that's the main ones.
Yep. Alrighty, awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me, and good luck with everything.
No worries. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for listening to the commentary booth live via satellite. If you enjoyed the show, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe on podcast services and YouTube. You can follow me on social media at JamieUpsMedia and at Pario Magazine.